there's a lot of subjects, or a lot of items that you leave out of your diet because of how it affects your consciousness. Could you go into detail? You just say, you know, these affect your consciousness in the book, sugar and alcohol and preservatives and additives. Can you expand on that a little bit, on those
Sure.
items?
First of all, how did I come to an understanding that these things are sugar of any sort? One exception so far I know for sure, and that's barley malt. But even barley malt's a problem if you do it in excess. So, you know, you can have bananas and apples and fruit and pineapple, you know, those are sweet fruits. Just don't have an excessive amount of them. So eat a banana, eat 2 bananas, but don't eat 5 bananas. Otherwise it will affect, you know, your perception and your consciousness. Now, besides sugar, there is caffeine. Any psychotropic drug, basically, is what we're talking about. Sugar and caffeine are both psychotropic drugs. That means it's a substance. You know, what we name a drug is it's a substance that you take, put in your body one way or another, and it affects your perception. That's a psychotropic drug. Sugar will do that. It affects your perception. It modifies the way you perceive things. Now, it's not dramatic. You know, it doesn't modify it like you know, heroin modifies it, or you know, these other sorts of strong drugs. But it does modify your perception. It modifies your central nervous system. It begins at first to hype you up. Therefore, the idea that sugar gives you energy. But very shortly after it hypes you up, it crashes you, thereby getting the idea that sugar, you know, becomes a downer. Well, then what you have to do is take more sugar, and then you take more sugar, and in order to not be down, you know, you take more sugar. And that tends to be the way our society works. We have sugar in everything, but sugar does affect consciousness. Now, I found this out, and preservatives also do. Some artificial colors do. Some artificial flavors do. It all was experiment. I noticed in my own, by the time I got to the point that my mind was getting very clear, where I could leave this reality and multi-process other realities at will very quickly, you know, almost instantly, then it's easy to tell how clear your mind is. Because you do something now, and then you ingest some substance, and suddenly it's difficult. You can't do it anymore. Whereas if it takes you, you know, a half an hour to work up to that state, you may not really know. But you know when it's on and it's off. So you can start to tell. Well, I started noticing that. My mind could go and in other reality systems very easily, and then sometimes it just couldn't. It seemed like it was hard, like you know, like trying to walk through waist-deep water. You know, you're just trying, you're putting a lot of effort, and you're just not getting anywhere. It was that sort of thing. So I started to experiment. Well, what was it? Where did that transition go from clear to not clear? And I finally isolated it to what I was eating. And then after lots of experimentation, eating this, taking a trip into the larger reality. Did it change? Was it just as clear or different? Eating something else. So there were literally hundreds and hundreds of experiments over years of time, just seeing what affected what. And that's what it's come down to. Sugar, caffeine, nicotine, you know, all the nicotine's a psychotropic drug. That doesn't send you on a trip, but it affects your consciousness. For example, most everyone, when they smoke that first cigarette, get dizzy. It affects the consciousness. Most people get kind of dizzy with nicotine. Eventually, like any drug, you get used to it, which means you can suppress the symptoms. It doesn't mean that it doesn't affect you. It just means you don't have the symptoms anymore. It's still affecting your body the same way. It's a drug, and it affects your physiology, whether you get symptoms of dizziness or not. You know, sugar, if you don't eat sugar at all, to where you kind of clear your system, you have sugar, and it just instantly affects your perception. Now, why don't people notice that when they, you know, have a Twinkie or eat a donut, that their perception changes? It's because they never stop eating sugar. Sugar's in everything. It becomes normal. Having a foggy mind is normal. So we don't define it as a foggy mind. It's a normal mind. What people don't know is what a clear mind's like. They only know what a foggy mind's like, and they call that normal. So it holds you back. If you have trouble meditating, if healing, if getting into the larger reality is problematic, well, you're probably, it's like running a race carrying a cement block. You know, you have a handicap. It's really difficult to do those things. You can't win many races if you have to carry a cement block with you as you run. It's just not good. And it's like that with the sugar. The reason I pick on sugar a whole lot is because it's so ubiquitous. Sugar in everything. The reason sugar is in everything is because sugar sells. Just like nicotine is an addictive drug. And nicotine is what sells cigarettes. Because when you're addicted to nicotine, you continue to buy the cigarettes to feed your addiction. I mean, what better thing than to get people using a product that you sell that's addictive to those people? I mean, you always have repeat customers because now you have a bunch of addicts. That's what happened with cigarettes and nicotine. Sugar is the same thing. We're all a bunch of sugar addicts. Sugar is addictive. And if you don't believe that, try not eating sugar. Try not eating sugar for a month and see how addictive it is. See the withdrawals that you go through. See the anxiety that you get, and see all the excuses you make up for getting a little sugar. Oh, this little bit won't matter. Oh, there's no sugar in this, you know. And you make up all the excuses, just like an alcoholic makes up those same excuses. Oh, just one drink won't hurt. And, well, this is just a beer. There's not much alcohol in this. Alcoholics will do the same thing. Any drug addict learns how to justify getting their drug. There's always some justification for it. Sugar's no different. It's a drug, it's psychotropic, it's addictive, but because it's legal, because it's endemic, because it's socially not only accepted but really required because you can't get away from it, then we don't look at it in those terms. But it is absolutely no different than taking any other psychotropic addictive substance. Now, all psychotropic substances don't send you on some kind of, bizarre trip. Nicotine doesn't send you on a bizarre trip, but it certainly affects your central nervous system. You know? Alcohol can send you on a bizarre trip, but it doesn't have to if you don't drink that much of it. If you sit down and drink a beer, it doesn't send you on a bizarre trip. It's just a beer. It still affects your central nervous system. Okay? It still affects your consciousness. And what we're doing in these experiencing the larger reality is a very subtle, very precise mental state. You can't do this with a foggy mind very easily. So if you're doing something that's very subtle and very precise, you say, well, a beer doesn't make you nuts. Well, no, a beer doesn't. But a beer will interact with you in such a way that it affects your consciousness, makes you controlling and using that consciousness more difficult. 2 beers then makes it even more difficult. 10 beers, makes it more difficult yet. But even 1 makes it a little more difficult. And when you're dealing in something very subtle and precise, even that 1 can bother you, make it difficult. Well, people don't drink beer all the time. You don't drink beer like every hour you don't have a beer. If you did, it would probably become a problem, right? You'd become an alcoholic if you had to have a beer every hour. But we do eat sugar every hour, pretty much. I mean, there are those that eat nothing between meals, but most people snack on this or that, and then when they eat, it has sugar. If they don't put sugar on it, it comes with sugar in it. Well, if you were to drink beer like you eat sugar, it would be a big problem. So sugar is a big problem just because we do it so excessively. Now you can eat some sugar, and for me anyway, it takes about 4 hours to clear it from my system. Well, what do we do in 4 hours? We eat another meal. We eat meals about every 4 hours, you see. And it takes about 4 hours for it mostly to clear your system.